Some names were never meant to be spoken aloud, for they carry a resonance that shatters the very fabric of reality. This is not merely a list of infernal entities, it is a descent into an ancient, terrifying hierarchy, a grim ranking of those demons in occult lore who were not simply feared for their power, but for their chilling ability to break the minds and souls of those who dared to summon them. This exploration goes beyond conventional notions of evil, venturing into the deepest wells of human dread and spiritual corruption. If you've returned to uncover more with us here at Beasts Beneath, thank you for your unwavering courage. Prepare to face the true faces of terror, for their names are whispered in hushed tones, their sigils drawn with trembling hands. These are the entities whose very presence can corrupt the soul, unravel the mind, and turn the world to ash. One will journey through the annals of demonology, confronting the faces of terror, and in this harrowing expedition, one will discover that the most insidious terrors begin not with fire, but with a simple whisper in the deepest corners of the mind. The descent into the hierarchy of infernal dread begins not with overt violence, but with the insidious erosion of one's inner sanctuary, the mind itself. This is the realm of the Haunter of Dreams, a demon known for its mastery over psychological torment and its terrifying invasion of the most vulnerable state of human consciousness, sleep. This entity does not burn with hellfire or wield physical weapons. Its tools are the very fabric of thought and memory, twisted into exquisite agony. Its presence is catalogued in fragmented medieval grimoires and whispers of ancient Persian tablets, where it is depicted as a silent stalker of the sleeping mind. Its methods are chillingly subtle, yet profoundly effective. The Haunter of Dreams specializes in sleep paralysis, binding its victims to their beds, helpless as it weaves waking nightmares around them. One feels an invisible weight pressing upon the chest, breath catching in the throat, while monstrous forms crawl from the shadows, unable to move, unable to scream. Beyond paralysis, it orchestrates vivid, agonizing hallucinations, blurring the line between reality and terror. Its victims describe grotesque figures dancing at the foot of their beds, loved ones transforming into hideous tormentors, or insidious whispers that fill the silence, promising unspeakable horrors. More subtly still, it implants false memories, meticulously constructing entire histories of trauma that never occurred, leaving its victims haunted by non-existent sins, their past warped into a personal hell. The very ground of one's identity becomes unstable, dissolving under the weight of fabricated guilt and dread. The visage of this demon is rarely fixed, appearing as a shifting face that morphs from comforting familiarity to ultimate horror, or a featureless void that reflects one's deepest fears. Its presence is often marked by soft, insidious whispers that coil around the mind, promising unspeakable terrors or planting seeds of despair. Most terrifyingly, its eyes are often described as bleeding, yet they never blink, watching with an unnerving, perpetual gaze that drills into the soul. One feels utterly exposed, utterly vulnerable to this silent, unblinking scrutiny. Symbolically, the Haunter of Dreams embodies the deepest fears of the subconscious. It is the living manifestation of suppressed guilt, surfacing in twisted forms to torment the mind. It preys upon ancestral trauma, reactivating forgotten wounds passed down through bloodlines, turning inherited burdens into personal nightmares. It is the architect of generational madness, silently infecting families one mind at a time until an entire lineage is consumed by shared delusions or inexplicable terror. Ancient prophets feared it, for it could turn divine revelation into maddening visions, twisting sacred messages into blasphemous horrors. Its subtle invasion of the mind, its ability to corrupt the very wellspring of thought and memory, makes it a truly terrifying adversary an intimate enemy that turns one's inner world into an inescapable prison of dread, feared by prophets. But this terror is only the beginning. Deeper still, the hierarchy of fear reveals entities that command not just the mind, but the very body. The dread deepens, moving from the intimate confines of the mind to the terrifying violation of the physical self. This is the domain of the flesh puppeteer, a demon whose very existence embodies the ultimate fear of losing autonomy, of one's own body becoming a prison commanded by an alien will. Its chilling presence is widely documented in Eastern European folk magic, where protective charms against it are woven into every household, and in the harrowing narratives of Ethiopian exorcist texts, which detail desperate struggles to reclaim human vessels from its grasp. This entity is notorious for its method of possession, not through the breath or the eye, but through direct touch or insidious skin contact. It can latch onto a victim through a fleeting brush in a crowded market, or a subtle, unnoticed scratch from an unseen presence in the night. Once attached, it commands the body like a marionette, bending limbs to grotesque angles, forcing smiles of agony, compelling its victims to perform acts utterly against their will. Imagine your own hands, once instruments of your intent, now twisting into claws, striking out against a loved one. Your legs, once carrying you to safety, now dancing an uncontrollable jig toward a precipice. The suffering is dual, the physical torment of a body being violated, and the profound psychological horror of a soul trapped within its own form, a helpless observer to its own degradation. History whispers chilling tales of its influence. One hears of medieval noblemen, renowned for their piety, suddenly succumbing to uncontrollable, lewd dances in the public square, their bodies twisting in obscene gestures until they collapsed from exhaustion. Monks, sworn to chastity, found themselves performing grotesque, ritualized acts of self-abasement, their bodies contorting in ways that defied human endurance, often dancing themselves to death, leaving behind a legacy of confusion and terror. These were not mere fits or madness, but the terrifying spectacle of the flesh puppeteer's complete dominion, forcing the body to blaspheme against the soul. To combat such an intimate and terrifying violation, desperate rituals were devised. Occultists and spiritual practitioners employed intricate binding spells, weaving complex countercharms to restrict the demon's influence, often requiring rare herbs and incantations spoken for days. More extreme methods included self-mutilation, as victims, in moments of lucidity, would attempt to sever the very limbs controlled by the demon, hoping to break its hold, a desperate act of reclaiming autonomy through agonizing pain. The most horrifying ritual, a testament to the extreme fear this demon invoked, involved live buriala final, desperate attempt to seal the possessed spirit within the earth to contain the horror, severing the connection before it could spread to others. Symbolically, the flesh puppeteer embodies the universal fear of losing autonomy, the ultimate betrayal of the self. It speaks to the terror of your body turned against your soul, a living prison commanded by an alien will. Its presence also reflects the pervasive societal fear of contagion, of something unseen invading the personal sanctuary of the body, turning it into a grotesque spectacle. This demon reminds us that the most profound forms of possession are not always about roaring voices and fiery eyes, but about the insidious loss of self, a body dancing to a demon's silent, unseen strings. But at least they still had a body to suffer in. What if even that comfort was stripped away? The journey into terror descends deeper, into the cold, silent horror of desecration and profound loss. This is the domain of the Bone Collector, a demon not associated with the vibrant chaos of the living, but with the chilling stillness of the grave and the profound agony of grief. This entity manifests in the bleakest chapters of human history, appearing in ancient necromantic texts, whispered about in war chronicles, and chillingly remembered in the lore of mass burial sites. It is a being that feeds on sorrow, corrupts memory, and turns the sacred rest of the dead into a mockery. The Bone Collector is said to embody the essence of forgotten suffering and ancestral desecration. Its hunger is for the grief of the living, drawing sustenance from the tears shed for the departed, especially when that grief is unresolved or prolonged. It is a demon that makes its lair in places of immense tragedy, battlefields strewn with the unburied dead, cemeteries ravaged by time or conflict, sites of plague where mass graves overflowed. Its ultimate act of terror is the desecration of the dead, not for mere destruction, but for a perverse, morbid art. It does not just disturb graves, it collects the bones, meticulously sorting and arranging them, constructing macabre effigies of bone and sorrow, grotesque monuments to human suffering. One might stumble upon a silent tableau of skeletal figures posed in silent agony, a chilling testament to its artistic depravity. Its visage is utterly unsettling, cloaked perpetually in tattered burial shrouds, smelling faintly of dust and corruption, as if it has just risen from the earth itself. Its fingers are not flesh and bone, but appear to be meticulously crafted from human femurs, each joint a gruesome, perfectly articulated segment, emphasizing its domain over the skeletal remains of humanity. Its touch is said to be cold, devoid of warmth, leaving behind an unbearable chill. This demon is most often summoned, or rather drawn forth, during times of immense suffering and widespread death, times of war, devastating famine, or brutal genocide provide its most fertile ground. When the veil between life and death thins due to widespread mortality, when the living are too overwhelmed by grief and chaos to properly bury their dead, the Bone Collector comes. It thrives on the unattended dead, the forgotten graves, the shattered families. Accounts describe communities gripped by an inexplicable despair, an inability to mourn, their grief turning into a dry, hollow ache, while unseen forces seem to move among the unburied. The subtle shifting of newly turned earth, the faint rustle of shrouds in the wind, these are its haunting signatures. Symbolically, the Bone Collector embodies the profound horror of forgotten suffering and the desecration of ancestral memory. It preys on the fear that the dead will not find peace, that their legacy will be erased, and that their final resting place will be violated. It represents the ultimate indignity, reducing the sacred remains of loved ones to mere components in a grotesque, infernal construction. One feels the profound violation of spiritual peace, a chilling echo of desecration that extends beyond the physical into the very fabric of one's lineage. Its presence ensures that, where this one walks, the ground never stops weeping. A testament to the perpetual sorrow it leaves in its wake, the soil forever saturated with unshed tears. But even this despair is less insidious than a voice that can steal your very mind. The journey into terror now turns inward, into the labyrinth of the mind, where the very concept of sanity is shattered not by physical force, but by insidious suggestion. This is the realm of the Whispering King, a demon whose terrifying potency is ranked high in Solomonic grimoires and finds chilling echoes in ancient Sumerian curse tablets. Unlike entities that manifest visibly, this demon's true terror lies in its invisibility. It doesn't appear in corporeal form, it only speaks. Its voice is its weapon, a poison distilled into pure sound, delivered through the most unnerving of mediums. Its whispers can emanate from the silence within mirrors, reflecting distorted truths. They can seep through walls, making the very architecture of your home a conduit for insidious suggestion. Most horrifyingly, its voice can come from the teeth of unsuspecting loved ones, the mouths of children, or even your own mouth, speaking words that are utterly alien, utterly corrupt. The effect is a gradual, relentless erosion of trust and reality. One begins to doubt their own senses, their own memories, the very sanity of those closest to them, as the Whispering King seeds discord through sound. The Whispering King is feared because it drives entire families to madness, often without leaving a single physical mark behind. No broken bones, no external wounds, only shattered minds and fragmented relationships. A harmonious household might suddenly be consumed by inexplicable paranoia, siblings accusing each other of unimaginable betrayals, parents suspecting their children of demonic possession, all fueled by the insidious, untraceable whispers. Its influence turns affection into bitter suspicion, and love into consuming fear, dissolving bonds until nothing remains but isolated, gibbering despair. Victims become convinced that their loved ones are imposters, that the very walls of their home are conspiring against them, their minds a battlefield for unseen forces. This demon commands lesser spirits like a general, not through overt power, but through the sheer force of its corrosive rhetoric. It uses language as its ultimate weapon, twisting words, inverting meanings, and planting suggestions so subtle that they are indistinguishable from one's own thoughts. It is the architect of self-doubt, the insidious voice that drives one to question everything they hold dear, to believe the most illogical fears, and to act upon them with devastating consequences. You might feel its influence as a constant, low thrum beneath your own thoughts, a persistent murmur of doubt that slowly consumes your certainty. Symbolically, the Whispering King embodies the profound fear of the unseen manipulator, the paranoia that unseen forces are controlling your reality, that your closest confidantes are secretly betraying you. It is the very essence of madness born from psychological warfare, transforming the ordinary into the terrifying and the familiar into the utterly alien. His power is the ultimate betrayal of the mind, compelling individuals to doubt their own sanity and, tragically, to become their own tormentors. Its insidious presence leaves behind a legacy of shattered psyches, irreparable betrayal, and a silence born of madness, where truth has no meaning. But even his whispers fade when the final terror arrives, a silence that heralds absolute annihilation. The journey culminates in an encounter with the ultimate horror, an entity so profoundly terrifying that its true name has been deliberately erased from most texts, referenced only in dire warning by other demons and whispered by occultists in terms of profound, existential dread. This is the Nameless Mouth, a being of pure, undifferentiated terror, a void given malevolent consciousness. It has no known sigil that can be drawn or invoked, for its essence defies form. Its presence is marked only by circular voids that spontaneously appear in reality, small patches of absolute nothingness that seem to absorb light and sound. Distorted geometry sometimes accompanies its arrival, bending space into impossible angles, a subtle hint of the chaos it embodies. If one dares to attempt to discern its shape, it appears as a perpetually gaping maw, an infinite cavern filled not with teeth, but with dismembered limbs and chanting tongues, perpetually speaking in a horrifying chorus of gibberish, endless, meaningless sounds. The sheer terror of its visage is its power, a direct assault on the senses, stripping away all meaning and form. Summoning this entity is an act of utter, suicidal madness. Those who attempt it are said to descend into gibbering speech, their own language dissolving into incoherent babble, their minds shattered by the sheer anti-logic of its presence. Accounts describe spontaneous mutilation as victims, in a desperate, final act of self-preservation, turn violently upon their own bodies, driven by an unbearable urge to shed their form. This is often followed by spontaneous disappearance, their physical bodies simply ceasing to exist, swallowed by the void they have invoked. The terror is total, physical, mental, and spiritual annihilation. This entity, terrifyingly, was worshipped by ancient desert cult tribes whose names have long been erased from history. These cults were utterly consumed by its horrifying presence, dedicating themselves to the sacrifice of speech itself to it, believing that by relinquishing language they could draw closer to its absolute, formless essence. They would ritually cut out their own tongues, or practice forms of extreme linguistic deprivation, reducing themselves to mere grunts and cries. Believing this form of self-annihilation brought them closer to the pure terror of the nameless mouth. Symbolically, the nameless mouth represents the pure annihilation of identity. It is the terror of being devoured spiritually, mentally, and historically. It consumes not just bodies but meaning, memory, and the very concept of self. It embodies the fear of being utterly erased, of existing as nothing but a screaming void within a larger, consuming darkness. Its horror lies in its absolute negation, its promise of non-existence. To witness it is to begin to dissolve. To truly confront it is to become it. This entity is the ultimate, most feared demon of all because its terror is absolute. Those who see it forget who they are, their very identity dissolving into the madness it represents. And then, chillingly, they forget how to be, their existence unraveling into the primordial void from which the nameless mouth perpetually feeds. The most feared demon is not in ancient books, not in fiery pits, not in grand narratives of rebellion. It is what fills the silent gaps between them, the formless terror that emerges from the depths of your own untamed mind, the ultimate mirror of your deepest, most unspoken fears. It is the terror of pure, undifferentiated horror, the void made conscious, a presence so fundamental that even naming it would grant it a reality you desperately wish it did not possess, leaving you forever haunted by its unspoken presence. You have journeyed through the infernal archives, encountering faces of primordial horror that predate the very devil you thought you knew. This descent has revealed that true demonic fear does not always emanate from the grand spectacle of fire and brimstone, nor from the overt rage of a malevolent entity. More often, it is born from the subtle dissolution of sanity, the insidious corruption of safety, and the gradual erosion of the sacred within your own being. It is the terror of the unseen, the insidious, and the profoundly ancient. These demons, though enshrined in myth and catalogued in dusty grimoires, are more than mere folklore. They represent archetypes still profoundly alive in our collective unconscious primal fears that manifest in modern anxieties, in societal dysfunction, and in the shadow aspects of the human soul. Amon's twisted peace echoes in the rage that consumes reconciliation. Raum's subtle ruin is mirrored in the slow decay of power and purpose. Andras's internal war is reflected in the fracturing of trust and the bitterness of division. Abizu's predation haunts the vulnerability of innocence. Coronzon embodies the terrifying chaos of mental dissolution. Belphegor's stagnation is the apathy that consumes ambition. Pazuzu's winds still carry the dread of unseen affliction. And the Nameless One is the embodiment of existential terror, the void that stares back from the depths of your own mind. Their stories are not just warnings about external entities, but profound reflections on the inner demons, the ancient forces that can be unleashed when power is unchecked, when desires are unbound, and when the human psyche grapples with the terrifying unknown. They remind you that some horrors are not banished with a simple word, but linger, waiting for an invitation, a moment of weakness, a turning of the eye away from vigilance. And in this realm of ancient dread, one chilling truth endures. Sometimes, not naming a thing, leaving its terror in the unspoken gaps, is the only protection we have.